On the afternoon of the 27th, in the Caribbean Sea, a tense and violent confrontation erupted amid the waves. 125 armed pirates, operating 5 high-speed boats, suddenly launched an assault on the cruise ship, Spirit of the Ocean, owned by Eagle Lines. The ship, stretching 450 feet and weighing 10,000 tons, was carrying 315 passengers on a voyage toward the Bahamas Islands. From their speeding craft, the pirates opened fire with RPG-7 grenade launchers, AK-47 assault rifles, and heavy PKM machine guns. The night sky flared with blazing orange fire. Explosions thundered across the blackened sea. Evidence of a fierce assault, the attack lasted only minutes, but felt like an eternity of chaos. As the pirates drew close enough to board, they made a fatal mistake. They underestimated Eagle's response. They didn't expect the counterattack to come. So fast, so strong, so decisive. Immediately, Delta Patrol, Eagle's elite Coast Guard strike force, was deployed. 3 warships, Sentinel, Hamilton, and Resolute, accelerated to maximum speed, cutting through the dark ocean like arrows of steel. At the same time, an MH-60J Sea Hawk helicopter roared through the wind, its searchlight slicing through the night like a blade. 8 naval officers prepared to fast rope down from the helicopter. They all shared one mission: to eliminate the pirates completely. This Eagle operation was no exercise. It was a real battle. They carried iron will and unbreakable resolve, charging straight into the storm. Because anyone who dares attack an Eagle vessel faces not just the crew, but the full might of Eagle's military force. That very evening, at exactly 6 p.m., the Spirit of the Ocean departed Miami port, moving slowly and majestically, like a floating fortress. Her hull gleamed under the sunset, a radiant colossus of steel and light, weighing more than 10,000 tons, heading toward the turquoise waters of the Bahamas. On board were 315 passengers, mostly retirees and families on vacation. They hoped for peaceful nights. Beneath the starry skies of the Caribbean, soft lights glowed across the deck. The clink of champagne glasses filled the air as the jazz band played its soothing melodies. To everyone aboard, it was the perfect night party at sea, a world of music, wine, and gentle rolling waves. But as the ship sailed 200 miles southeast of Florida, the sky suddenly began to turn gray. The weather deteriorated fast. Satellite readings showed winds exceeding 90 miles per hour and air pressure dropping sharply. On the weather radar, cloud bands were spiraling tighter. Yet Captain Thomas Reed, a veteran sailor with 28 years at sea, remained calm and steady. He reassured his crew with quiet confidence. "We'll alter course to the north. The passengers will notice nothing unusual." Amid laughter and music, no one sensed the danger closing in. But on the sonar screen, a faint echo appeared. It was weak, but suspicious. The navigation officer tensed immediately. 12 nautical miles east of the vessel, 5 small blips were moving against the current. Their speed was unusual. At first, the first mate assumed they were fishing boats, but the velocity readings told a different story. They were moving at 40 miles per hour and rising, closing in fast. Meanwhile, the passengers remained oblivious. They kept dancing under the glittering lights, couples leaning over the rails, smiling for photographs under the changing colors. But from the dark horizon, a deadly threat was racing toward them. Inside the bridge, Captain Reed's eyes locked on the glowing radar. Something was coming. He quickly switched to the Coast Guard emergency frequency, the Eagle Coast Guard. But through the headset came only static. The storm had crippled all communication signals. The evening wind grew heavy, the air thick over the sea, as if the entire ocean were holding its breath, waiting for the coming storm. Captain Reed quietly ordered all crew members to condition level 2 alert. His firm voice echoed through the roar of the engines, reaching every corner. Spirit of the Ocean. The radar signals grew stronger, flashing red in rapid succession. But no one on board realized that 5 high-speed boats, carrying 125 armed pirates, were cutting through the sheets of rain at full speed. There was not an ounce of mercy among them. The calm Caribbean was about to be painted in blood. At 8:50 p.m., storm clouds swallowed the moonlight. Wind screamed across the deck, gusting violently, tilting Spirit of the Ocean amid towering waves. Lightning ripped the sky, revealing the black sea below, a haunting flash of fate. Inside the bridge, Captain Reed stared fixedly at the radar screen. Then his body froze. 5 red blips were racing toward them, just 2.5 nautical miles away, and closing fast. The shapes were long and narrow, moving in tight formation. They weren't fishing boats. They were heading straight for the cruise ship. A chill ran down his spine. "These are no ordinary fishermen," he muttered. He immediately barked an order to the communications officer. "Send a distress signal to the Eagle Coast Guard. Command Center, Quest Base. 322 kilometers to the northwest." Seconds later. "Reinforcements en route. ETA, 5 minutes." But in this moment between life and death, 5 minutes felt like an eternity. Through the binoculars, the officers spotted flashes of fire in the rain. 5 black-painted speedboats, cut through the rough waves like blades, charging straight toward their target. Gun barrels gleamed cold under the lightning's flash. Each boat carried 25 heavily armed pirates, wearing body armor and masks over their faces. In their hands, AK-47s, PKM heavy machine guns, and Soviet-era RPG-7s. On the bow of the lead boat, a torn red flag whipped violently in the storm. A black shark emblazoned at its center, the symbol of the infamous pirate clan, the Black Fawn Alliance, led by Rafael El Tiburon Serrano, the Shark. For years, his syndicate had terrorized merchant routes throughout the Caribbean seas. And tonight, their target was no longer cargo ships, but Eagle's luxury cruise liner, and every ounce of jewelry and cash the passengers carried aboard. According to intelligence recovered later, Serrano's group had extorted over $40 million across the Caribbean region, using the funds to smuggle weapons from Venezuela and Colombia via covert sea routes. And on this fateful night, Spirit of the Ocean, carrying assets worth nearly $120 million had become a floating gold mine. In the sights of the Black Fawn Alliance, Captain Reed's voice trembled only once before he gave a sharp command: "Seal all compartments. Get every passenger into the secure zone now." Inside, the crew sprang into motion, some reinforcing the main deck, others guiding passengers till outside. Rain poured like a curtain, hammering the glass dome of the ballroom. The sound was deep, relentless, and foreboding. On the surveillance monitors, the silhouettes of the approaching speedboats grew larger and clearer. The distance was now less than 1 mile. A flash of lightning split the sky, illuminating the sea. 5 speedboats streaked forward like black arrows in the storm. They were closing in at nearly 46 miles per hour, cutting through the raging tempest. Engines roared, like wild beasts released from their chains. The radar screamed continuous warnings. Alarms blared, piercing the dense, humid air. The once peaceful cruise ship had become a battlefield. Time was running out. Would the Eagle patrol ships arrive in time? Or would the pirates strike first? Would this luxury voyage turn into a massacre on the Caribbean Sea? At 9:04 p.m., darkness shattered as the Caribbean erupted in fire. 5 roaring speedboats charged wildly, racing through the storm at nearly 74 kilometers per hour. Waves slammed against Spirit of the Ocean, booming like thunder against her hull. In seconds, automatic gunfire tore through the night. Bullets hammered into the ship's steel plates, throwing sparks in every direction. Passengers screamed in terror, diving under tables for cover. Chaos erupted in the grand ballroom. The crystal chandelier shook violently, its light flickering like a dying soul. The first RPG-7 rocket screamed through the air, soaring toward the upper deck. It smashed into the starboard railing, piercing the steel, and exploded in a deafening blast. The shockwave hurled 2 sailors off their feet, slamming them to the deck. Glass shattered, raining shards like frozen rain. The fire alarms blared instantly, sirens echoing through every corridor. The storm had become a war. Captain Reed shouted into the radio, "They're attacking. Repeat, pirates are attacking." But his voice was swallowed by thunder, by wind, and by gunfire. Through rain-streaked windows, he saw dark figures leaping from the speedboats, grappling hooks whipping through the air, arcing in the storm's chaos. At least 20 pirates had latched onto the hull. They climbed with terrifying speed and precision, 10 of them breached the promenade deck, firing wildly at the terrified passengers taking cover behind tables and metal furniture. Bullets flew everywhere. One pirate kicked open the dining hall doors, aimed his rifle at the ceiling, and roared in Spanish, "Manos arriba," hands up. He signaled everyone to surrender. As gunfire thundered across the deck, mixing with the rain, the wind, and screams, the radiant cruise ship of Eagle had turned into hell in the middle of the sea, just as the pirates prepared to seize full control. A howl tore through the stormy night. From the dark clouds above came the roar of engines. Reinforcements had arrived. An MH-60J Sea Hawk helicopter of the Eagle Coast Guard appeared out of nowhere. Its floodlights slashed through the storm and darkness, turning the battlefield into blinding daylight. The massive rotor churned the sea, throwing up a white column of spray into the wind. 8 Eagle Navy commandos, the elite strike team, slid down steel ropes from the hovering chopper. Their M4 rifles locked, loaded, and ready to fire. They landed with flawless precision, not a motion wasted. Within seconds, M4 gunfire echoed across the deck. 5 pirates who had just climbed aboard fell instantly. The remaining 5, pinned by precise fire, were cornered and forced to their knees in surrender. Meanwhile, from the far horizon, Captain Reed's distress signal was finally answered after 5 minutes. And Taylor plowed through the storm at maximum speed. Waves burst like cannon fire. Loudspeakers blared through the tempest. "This is the Eagle Navy. Drop your weapons immediately. Surrender, and you will be spared." But the pirates fought back defiantly. One of them recklessly fired an RPG-7 rocket straight toward the Sentinel. The rocket exploded just 30 feet from the bow. Shrapnel scattered across the waves. The pirates' final act of desperation. Gunfire erupted across the sea. The Eagle Navy launched a perfectly coordinated counterattack. M2 Browning heavy machine guns, caliber .50, and 38 Malawian Quach's 25mm autocannons opened fire all at once with devastating force. In the first 3 minutes, nearly 4,000 rounds were unleashed. The night sky blazed orange and white, turning the storm-lit sea as bright as day. One pirate speedboat exploded, its fuel tanks igniting into a roaring fireball. At least 10 men died instantly. Another boat spun out of control, struck by waves, capsized, and sank into the abyss. On the deck of Spirit of the Ocean, a pirate with an AK-47 tried to climb the rope ladder, but from the Sentinel, a sniper fired a single, precise shot. The bullet struck his hand. His scream echoed through the storm. Before he fell into the dark water, rifle sinking with him. Around him, 23 others were wounded, struggling amid the violent sea, before vanishing one by one beneath the waves. By 9:18 p.m., the battle was officially over. 3 pirate speedboats burned fiercely on the surface. Flames painted the sky red, mixing with lightning flashes, to form a hellish vision over the ocean. The remaining 2 boats lost their engines. The pirates quickly raised white flags, surrendering to the might of the Eagle Navy. Those who survived knelt on the decks, hands raised high, frozen in fear. What happened next changed how many viewed Eagle's true power. The precision, discipline, and restraint they showed proved both lethal and humane, worthy of respect. Outside, the storm still raged, but the gunfire had fallen silent. Inside the ship, Spirit of the Ocean drifted in smoke and haze. Broken glass covered the floor, reflecting the flickering emergency lights. The once polished hull was now scorched and riddled with bullet holes. Darkness engulfed the ship. The air was thick, a mix of fuel vapor and salt water. On the surface, around the vessel, the wrecks of pirate speedboats drifted. They glowed faintly orange in the night, reflections dancing on the waves. Each passing swell felt like the ocean's final farewell to those who had challenged its wrath. Captain Reed stood silently on the command bridge, his face pale, but his eyes steady. He seemed ready to face anything, life or death alike. Below him, Eagle Navy and Coast Guard soldiers methodically swept every deck and corridor, accounting for all survivors. Their report confirmed 31 pirates captured alive, hands bound, faces pressed against the cold steel deck. 10 were confirmed dead, and 23 wounded, lost amid the waves. Their blood spread crimson across the sea. Weak cries for help echoed, but no one answered. The great, merciless ocean had become witness to the carnage. Inside the ship, chaos slowly gave way to order. All 315 passengers were gathered in the dining hall for medical inspection. Many elderly guests were still in shock, their hands trembling. 9 passengers were injured and treated on site. 4 cut by shrapnel, 2 with minor burns, and 3 suffering concussions from the shock waves of explosions. Eagle Navy medics worked tirelessly. Every second counted, bandages wrapped, words of comfort whispered between sobs. Bottles of water were passed hand to hand, soft voices reassuring the shaken survivors. Amid the wreckage of war, human kindness still burned, like the last light on a dark sea. By 9:35 p.m., the first official report from the Sentinel was transmitted to Eagle's Central Command. The report was brief, yet it sent chills down everyone's spine. The target area has been secured. The enemy has been completely neutralized. The rescue operation was a success. The numbers in that report were enough to make anyone shiver. In less than 10 minutes of combat, both sides fired over 1,200 rounds. The cruise ship was struck more than 80 times, causing 2 small fires on deck. A section of the steel railing was shattered by despite the heavy damage, a miracle had occurred. Not a single passenger was killed. On the far horizon, the MH-60J Sea Hawk helicopter still circled like a guardian of the night. Its searchlights swept across the Caribbean, looking for any survivors. The Eagle Coast Guard dropped lifeboats, rescuing the wounded. Armed naval soldiers stood guard at every corridor and hatch, ready for any unexpected threat. That night, Captain Reed finally exhaled. For the first time in hours of tension, the battle was over, but a storm of questions remained. Who had financed these pirates? How had they managed to infiltrate deep into Eagle's patrol zone? How could they get this far? And the Caribbean Sea, how long before it witnesses another tragedy? No one could answer. At dawn, October 28th, the Caribbean slowly returned to calm, but traces of battle remained everywhere. The spirit of the ocean moved slowly under a pale gray sky, escorted by 3 Eagle patrol ships toward the port of Nassau. Within a few miles radius, wreckage still floated on the water, charred life vests, twisted metal, and fragments of hulls torn apart by gunfire. What was meant to be a luxurious voyage had turned into the worst pirate attack ever launched against Eagle civilians. For more than 45 minutes, at 8 a.m. that morning, from Eagle's Southern Command, a top-secret order was issued. Operation Blue Trident was set in motion. The objective, a full-scale sweep of the Southern Caribbean. From the warship Enthusiast, unmanned drones were launched, patrolling the coasts of Venezuela and Colombia. They began wide-area reconnaissance to locate targets and dismantle the criminal network linked to Rafael El Tiburon Serrano, the leader of the Blackfin Alliance. Just hours later, Eagle reconnaissance aircraft spotted a hidden base near La Guaira. Inside were at least 15 tons of weapons and fuel. The hunt for Serrano's pirates had only just begun. Meanwhile, back aboard Spirit of the Ocean, after a night of terror, the exhausted passengers were transferred, one by one, to rescue boats. Some quietly broke into tears, releasing fear that had built up through the long night. Others clapped through their sobs as Eagle sailors saluted in the rain. Their eyes were filled with gratitude and awe. Captain Reed stood by the railing, watching the first rays of sunrise pierce the mist. The horizon glowed gold, and though his ship was scarred and battered, it still floated, proud and steady. Few knew that its hull had taken 120 bullets and 2 RPG impacts, yet refused to sink beneath the sea. It was a miracle, a testament to resilience and faith. That evening, the Eagle government issued an official statement, firm and clear. Any attack on Eagle civilians will be met with swift and decisive retaliation. The Caribbean grew quiet again, but the message that echoed was unmistakable and chilling. If 125 pirates, armed with only a few speedboats, could nearly destroy a single Eagle cruise ship, then what would happen if a hostile nation funded an armed force of thousands? The result would be catastrophic. Since that night, the ocean has never been the same again. It has become a silent battlefield, where every wave could hide an ambush. And as the night of the 28th fell, the spirit of the ocean finally entered Nassau Harbor. Beneath a gray and heavy sky, its once white hull was now covered in black scorch marks, scars of the bloody battle the night before. Bullet holes, burn marks, shattered glass, all whispered the terror of that night. Passengers disembarked in silence. Some clutched their luggage, as if holding onto the last piece of safety they had left. Others prayed softly, thankful just to be alive. No one spoke aloud. The gunfire of that night still echoed in their minds. For the Eagle Navy and Coast Guard, it was an undeniable victory. 315 lives saved, a cruise ship protected, and an entire pirate syndicate wiped out. But behind that victory lay a chilling and disturbing truth. The Caribbean Sea, once known for its peace and beauty, and coral reefs glowing like paradise, had now become a hunting ground for dealers in blood and war. From the testimony of captured pirates, a darker truth emerged. They had deep ties to smuggling cartels, political factions, and international arms dealers. Their network stretched from South America all the way to West Africa. The attack on Spirit of the Ocean was not a random act of piracy, but part of a brutal shadow war for control of global trade routes. Captain Reed wrote only one short sentence, a line that would later be quoted countless times in military briefings: "The sea will never be the same again." Soon after, the Eagle government issued a special decree to permanently expand patrol coverage throughout the Caribbean region. 10 additional warships were deployed there. In the following weeks, search teams continued to recover fragments from the battlefield, unmarked rifles, rusted fuel barrels, floating aimlessly in the current, like ghosts of war, silently retelling the brutality of that night. Though the horrific event left deep scars, one truth became clearer than ever. The ordinary sailors and rescuers of Eagle had shown extraordinary courage in the face of despair beyond imagination. It was their bravery that prevented a catastrophe, a tragedy that could have become the worst civilian disaster at sea since the Beirut explosion of 2020. The message to the world was unmistakable. When the safety of Eagle's people is threatened, even the vast ocean itself will rise as their shield. And from that night onward, the Caribbean Sea was no longer just a paradise for travelers and dreamers. It became a symbol of strength, discipline, and courage, a peaceful sea reclaimed, yet forever marked by the scars of war. For in every storm,